Welcome to Analyst Talk with Jason Elder. It's like coffee with an analyst, or it could be whiskey with an analyst reading a spreadsheet, linking crime events, identifying a series, and getting the latest scoop on association news and training. So please don't be that analyst and join us as we define the law enforcement analysis profession one episode at a time.
Thank you for joining me. I hope many aspects of your life are progressing. My name is Jason Elder, and today our guest has 7 years of law enforcement analysis experience. He holds a Master's of Science in Criminology from Missouri State University and is currently the VP of Admin for MARCAN, Mid-America Regional Crime Analysis Network. He is also part of the IACA Regional Associations and Chapters Committee. Please welcome Logan Konopasek. Logan, how we doing?
Doing well. How are you, Jason?
I am doing well. How is Mid-America these days?
It is great, turning to fall, so I'm kind of dreading the cold coming in, but I'm soaking up the nice days while I have them.
Oh, yeah. So that is coming to a place near you soon, right?
Yeah.
It's becoming the holiday season, which means that it's going to get a little colder. So, all right. Well, hey, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. We got a lot to talk about. Definitely, we're gonna get your perspective and contributions to the profession, and we're gonna talk a little bit about the IACA conference and a little bit about Python for crime analysis. But I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. So first, Logan, how did you discover the law enforcement analysis profession?
Yeah, Jason. I kind of stumbled into crime analysis kind of by happenstance. I grew up in a really small town in north central Missouri, very, very rural area, farming community. I think I had like 17 people in my graduating class. So
Wow.
like nobody around. But like ever since I was a kid, I wanted to be a state trooper for Missouri. And I don't really know why I was drawn so much to the state troopers, other than the fact that really anytime I had interacted with the police, it was with a state trooper, just at like school football games and stuff like that. And they always seemed just top tier, very well dressed officers, everything. And so yeah, I kind of trucked through high school just knowing I wanted to be a cop, and then went to college. I think I got all the way through my bachelor's degree, and then was working as an intern at a local amusement park in security. And we had, or during that little internship, we were doing some training that was really law enforcement centric, doing like defensive tactics and your verbal judo, how you approach people on calls, and radio etiquette and everything like that. And really gave me a nice taste of what it was like to be getting dispatched to calls, and you don't know the next thing that was about to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So that really woke me up to, this really just isn't for me. I really respect everything that those folks do, but I found myself kind of toward the end of the season when I worked there, anytime I got dispatched to a call, like about anything negative that could go wrong, like flooded my brain, like almost to the point where like I really couldn't respond appropriately. So yeah, I had a lot of self-awareness then, and like this just wasn't for me. I didn't want to get myself or a partner hurt. So I kind of went back to the drawing table, and that was right at the end of working out the bachelor's degree. But I'd already started the master's program where you could kind of do dual credit for bachelor's and master's at that point in time. So I knew I had a little bit of time to kind of figure out what I wanted to do. And I just kind of started browsing the internet, trying to find a career that would be something that would interest me and that I could apply the skills and the underlying criminological theory that I really liked. Came across the FBI Intel Analyst description on the internet, and I was like, man, this sounds really cool. And so I just kind of started looking up everything I could possibly find on intelligence and crime analysis, and it just so happened to be that one of the local law enforcement officers who did off-duty work at this amusement park, I got to know him really well, and he sent me a job posting at my current agency whenever they announced that they were going to be hiring for it. I think that was early 2015. And so I applied for it and got put on the list. Just kind of the weird mechanism of how they hire where I'm at, and it was like valid for 2 years. So at that point in time, I was like, I don't really know what I'm going to do. I didn't really want to like move too far away from home. somewhere that I wasn't completely unfamiliar with. And so I kind of went a backup route. And at that point in time, I had been interning with the U.S. Probation and pretrial in Springfield. So probation was kind of the other interest that I had. I could interact with people and hopefully make the community a little better through that route. And so I found a juvenile probation officer posting in Kansas City, applied there, and worked there for about a year and a half till I was called off the list to the position that I applied for a couple years before. So that's how I landed where I'm at.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've made this joke, but I used to pick on when I was in school. This is going back way wrong. With those that were interested in corrections, I used to make fun of them that's the ass end of the system. That's the back end. But I still want to get your perspective though, as you're looking back now, your time as a probation officer. What were some of the things that you got into that you remember, and how did that shape you as an analyst today?
Yeah, it was, I think the biggest thing that kind of stuck with me even through my current job is really being able to sit and talk with the people who you have on probation. And like, you realize it's not just somebody who did something bad, it's like somebody living a life. So there's a lot, the big complexities there that you really navigate through. And those are things that I still keep in mind as I'm working cases right now, like how maybe I can approach a case and then just keep myself in check that this isn't just some kind of fun thing. This is real life and people's lives. That's probably the biggest thing. And yeah, just really getting out in the community, and because I still work in this general area. And so I got to familiarize myself with street layouts and all that stuff. Like whenever I was doing home visits, I got to go into people's homes and talk with them where they were at. So it was kind of a nice transition once I became an analyst, because the geography is a huge part, and I'd already been out and about in the community, and I knew where I was looking for things and some of the different dynamics from community to community.
Yeah, and you were a juvenile probation officer as well. So I would imagine that there was dealing with juveniles and having a better idea of maybe what they're thinking, what their interests are, that helps you maybe analyze a crime pattern too as well, I imagine.
Yeah, because I mean, I used to pick these kids up to take them to some different programming, and I'd have to just roll around in this beat up van and pick them up and listen to them talk amongst each other and just kind of what they did on the weekends or after school and stuff. So it gave me some good familiarity whenever it comes to applying some of the knowledge as an analyst.
As you mentioned, it does put a face with the record,
yeah.
Right? It is sometimes when you're just looking at numbers, you forget that all of these are people, and it does put some perspective in your mind. All right. So when you start as an analyst, just take us back to what you were thinking those first couple of weeks, what you remember, maybe the biggest shock value as you're just starting your analyst career.
Yeah, it was very eye-opening. I didn't realize the extent to which agencies truly relied on analysis, because I mean, I was kind of just doing the open source look at it and everything. I talked to a couple analysts from Springfield, I think. I had the police chief of Springfield as a teacher, so he kind of linked me up. But yeah, it was just such a new world for me. I was like, I feel like I'm way in over my head and didn't know what I was really should have been doing. But some people on our team were just like super analysts, and I was like, I don't know how in the world I'll ever get to that level, which kind of drove me to really put the pedal to the metal and soak up any information that I could and practice my skills, just keep learning more, because it's a pretty good feeling whenever you kind of go up against the OG on a task and you beat them. So keep them in check a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds like a story to tell. What are you referring to?
Well, I'm going to tell on him here, but Darren Lee, I think you've interviewed him in the past.
I did. Yeah.
They're probably early on in my career. I think 2018 or so, I moved to the Robbery unit to be that dedicated analyst, and Darren and I shared a cube, and so we the computers faced each other, so I could like pop around my computer and see him and stuff. But he'd been there for a while, and he knew what he was doing, very good at his job. he would always throw me tasks, which was probably one of the best things that helped me learn. And I would bounce ideas off of him of how to approach whatever problem, and then kind of review stuff with him. And he's like, try this or this. And I'm like, oh, well, there it is. But he got to the point where he liked doing these races to like figure out somebody from their Facebook, or here's a moniker, let's find a name. And we'd essentially race to figure out who could find it first.
Mm-hmm.
And it got to the point we were pretty competitive with it, that made a wooden golden chicken nugget.
Oh, nice.
It was like you got the golden nugget information, and we would kind of race for that. And then at the end of the month, we would tally up who had the most golden nuggets. It's really cheesy kind of thing, but honestly, that helped me tremendously, learning the workflow and where you can find various pieces of information and thinking outside the box and creatively.
Yeah, I like the speed factor of it too, because as an analyst, you never know when you're going to be in a situation where you have to work very, very fast.
Yeah, and we've had quite a few of those, even just this year with like the Chiefs rally shooting. It was like all hands on deck, and being able to whip out every tool in the book that you can think of to apply right then and there. It helps tremendously.
Yeah. So you go from patrol to robbery unit.
Yeah.
So how was that transition from you? Because obviously those are two very different tasks in terms of the analyst job.
Yeah, the patrol division, you're doing more tactical and a little bit of strategic analysis in it, doing your stats and crime mapping for deploying officers, the basics and stuff. With that, they just kind of how it was set up, at least then. We used to do these homicide call outs, so I could join that and be on call for a week, and then anytime there was a homicide, I would be called in and do the like investigative support. So it was this nice blend of investigations and then your tried and true crime analysis thing. I got lucky. I was at a lower division, and so I had the opportunity that I could really delve in and tinker with things like how to do one analyses, different methods of crime analysis, and just seeing how I could apply it, and officers would respond to it. So I was lucky with that, but I was always drawn to the investigative side. So whenever I got the call that they said or asked me if I was interested in it, and I thought I can't say no to this, and I'm the type of person, like, if you give me an opportunity, I want to at least try it out and see if it's for me. Maybe it's going to be a little more challenging. I don't like to be bored, so that's sometimes I would get bored at my division, but it was good that just how I think, I'm just going to dive in and try to learn something new and maybe tweak operations to see how it works better for me.
All right. So this brings us to your analyst badge story. And for those that maybe new to the show, the analyst badge story is a career-defining case or project that an analyst works. So it's 2018. You're in this robbery unit, and you come along a robbery series.
Yeah. So I think this actually occurred right at the tail end of me being at the patrol station. So I was doing the daily task of reviewing police reports and trying to find any information in them that sticks out, just like everyone's taught as a junior crime analyst. That's what you're doing. I think that one, I can't remember what period in the year it was. It might have been midsummer, but yeah, I can't remember. Not that it really matters, but I remember seeing a report of a robbery at not a gas station, a car wash. And just the details of it were kind of odd. Like I hadn't read anything like that before. There really wasn't much to go on. It was just kind of very unique approach. Like, I believe the victim would show up to the car wash, and then the suspect went up to the car, hopped in, and then took their phone and keys and ran off. It might have been doing it at gunpoint. I can't remember specifically. So it was kind of a weird part of town. Like, there's apartments all around it, and then it's a lot of businesses, and then I think there's like senior living kind of behind it. So kind of had the inkling up front that might have been somebody from that apartment complex, because it was just a really quick jaunt from the apartment to the car wash, and there was no report of the suspect driving a car or anything. So I kind of just made mental note of that one, and believe it was like a month or two later, reading reports again, and I come across the same car wash, the another case that was very, very similar to it. And I was like, oh, I think we've got a pattern. So I called up our robbery unit and told them I don't think they were having very good cooperation from the victims in these. So I think they were kind of at their the end of what they could do with it. So at this point, I was like, this guy's going to keep doing this, and so we need to have some type of approach to shut this down and disrupt that, so we don't have additional people being victimized by this guy right here. So again, this was like a point in time where I had a lot of reading material from that I could find online about crime analysis and integration into patrol. And I remember, what is the book's name? It was like Crime Analysis Integration for Patrol Work, or it was a Boba Santos publication, I think from like early 2010s or so. I remember seeing a few products in there that really interested me that weren't just like a summarization of incidents, like gives officers a little direction of what you could do in that area. So I remember finding something on like hotspots and auto burglaries and kind of replicated that for my use there. So I put a map in there, was trying to exercise as many of the basic crime analysis things that I could find. I think I even put in MO and common date and time, which for this was kind of very limited.
At what time, how many cases do you have that you know that are tied to the series?
I think it was 2.
Okay. Yeah, that's a very small number.
Yeah, I want to say, if I remember right, they were all on the weekend, or both on the weekend. But I even went so far to talk to a housing officer who was embedded in the office space with me, since we had that big apartment complex back there, and we were kind of chatting, and she was like, actually, I may know who that is, because she had gotten reports about some male who somewhat matched what the victims were describing as a suspect, and I think he'd been trespassed from the area, but he kept turning up out there. So I remember that product had like known offenders in the area, so I remember throwing that guy on there. I think he might have had a couple warrants and a couple other problematic people who had lived in that apartment complex with warrants, just to at least contact them, see what they're up to, maybe generate some additional leads for detectives, since they really had nothing to go on here. Lo and behold, they end up getting one of the guys in custody, who happened to be the guy from that housing officer. And if I remember right, that guy had confessed to it, but we didn't have any victim cooperation in it. So they handled his warrants and stuff and sent him on his way, and it disrupted it. And I don't remember ever seeing him pop up in a case since.
So is it that they went and just talked to him in terms of doing the probation check?
I know whenever they picked him up, and I want to say that they interviewed the guy, and I never did hear what exactly went on, interrogation or anything, but whatever approach it was, it disrupted it.
Yeah, it's a pretty simple concept though, right? I mean, when you look at something like robbery or burglary, and this is for new analysts that may be thinking this through, always look at other types of crime that are in the area, something like trespassing or, loitering, or there's some of those activities are just preemptive to some of these more serious crimes. And so in this case, it sounds like this guy was already on probation, and he already had some trespassing type offenses there that put him in the area recently.
Yeah, and that was probably one of the early points in my career where I really got to see some fruit from the labor that I put into it, and exercising some of those foundational things to identify patterns. So that was one that's stuck with me ever since, and trying to adopt something new into the workflow.
Yeah, well, kudos. As you mentioned, the leads kind of dried up, and you were able to stick with it and at least get that series stopped. So good deal. So from your time in robbery, you eventually move on to where you are now in the homicide unit. And so let's talk about that transition. How it was that going from robbery to homicide, and type of stuff that you're doing now?
Yeah, it was, I think, a good transition. It was kind of weird. I really don't know what preempted the department to switch gears with this, but I did the robbery thing for 2 years, and I remember my major at the time just coming back from a meeting and saying, we're transitioning an analyst to homicide. Logan, you're going to be doing that starting Monday. I was like,
Oh, wow.
I was like, yes, sir. So yeah, they kind of left the robbery unit high and dry, but 2020 was the worst year we had for homicides on the book. So I know that they were trying to find some mechanisms to try to bring those numbers down, which I'm glad they thought of analysts. But at that point in time, I think we had either 3 or 4 of us analysts, I believe it was 3, assigned to support the entire violent crime. So it was a lot of work, but it was a good transition for me. I like new things, and it was a different challenge. So I did have a good shoe in the door because I'd still been doing the homicide on call, so I had some good familiarity with a lot of the homicide detectives and sergeants. So I had already developed those relationships, which, yeah, for any new analysts listening here, the relationships that you're developing with officers, command staff, detectives goes a long way in them trusting you and opening up their world to you to come in and do what you do best. But yeah, we've even seen just since 2020 a lot of change within our unit on how we're integrating analysts. Thankfully, our current chief, I remember her meeting with the homicide unit earlier in her tenure. I can't remember if she came on early 2023, but all the homicide units that we have had each said, like, we want an analyst assigned to our squad because we think we could be a little more efficient and effective with how we're doing things if we have somebody that's dedicated to us. So they ended up finding some funding throughout the community to get that and make that happen. So we went from 3 analysts, and 1 was supporting homicide, 1 kind of floated and did whatever, and then we had somebody assigned to our assault squad. Now we have 4 different homicide analysts, each assigned to a specific squad. We work 2 weeks of murder squad rotation with the detectives that are on call. Every now and then I'll go out to the crime scene and brief up with them just to get out of the office and get a kind of sense of what I'm going to be working with in the case, hear things firsthand from responding officers. And the biggest thing I think of even doing that is showing some of those detectives you work with that you're willing to get away from the computer a little bit and meet them in their world and see how they do things, because it definitely helps your understanding of the investigative process and just developing those relationships with them. And we've also got a robbery unit staffed with an analyst again, and kind of slowly transitioning to having a special victims unit analyst and still a assault analyst as well.
That's interesting. It seems a little chaotic, but I think you handled it well. It is just 2 days on, 3 days off, or whatever you mentioned there is a little bit odd, and I think you handle it with the right attitude. I always think back at some of the stuff that I did. I don't think I would have taken that well if I was in your shoes, because I was like, that did happen to me one time where somebody just reassigned me, and I always thought in the civilian world it just seemed like you should have got the heads up kind of thing. And I think that's going to be of a debate, but I just feel that, like, just to say, somebody come in there and say, oh, by the way, you're over here now.
Yeah.
It is just abruptly, with you not having any idea or anything else. Not that they need to seek your permission, but I don't know. There's probably a debate in there, but it does seem a little odd to me that you just all of a sudden like, oh, that person's just gonna go and whatnot. But it sounds like it worked out for you, so which is always good. So,
yep.
But all right. And then I guess before we move on, is there anything else in terms of what you're doing now? Maybe what's coming up next for you there at the department? Anything you want to touch on before we move on?
Nothing I can think of. I'm just going to be trucking away doing what I normally do.
Hi, everyone. This is data scientist Andrew Wheeler. For my PSA is, if you ever think to yourself, can't you use AI to do that? Just stop right there and don't say that sentence. I know that that's more for the managers and the crime analysts out there, but every single time somebody has come to me with, well, can't you use AI to solve that? It's never a good question to actually use any type of even not AI solutions. So you need to think about what you actually want before you utter that sentence.
This is Jesus Varela with Rimmon. I just want to tell the world, remember your last letters. ATM, you don't have to say machine. It's already in there. CDRs, you don't got to say records. RMS, you don't got to say system. SARS, you don't got to say report. So just be careful. Watch that last letter.
So let's move on then. You're an instructor and you're coming from the practitioner world into the academic world. And so how's that been for you so far?
Yeah. So I taught a criminology course at Missouri State University last fall, and the department head there at the point, or yeah, I think he's a department head now. I'll call him out, Dr. Garland. He was actually one of the people. Go back to grad school here for a minute. I would do projects and stuff that were related to crime analysis, your research projects or doing a paper here and there. And he would always try to sway me away from doing crime analysis. And I don't know what it was about it. He just didn't really seem to be very enthusiastic about really embracing it. And so it was just always trying to convince me to either go get a PhD or go another route. So it was really odd to me whenever he called me up and asked if I would teach a crime analysis course for him. But I was like, yeah, absolutely. They didn't have anything like that before. And so it was a new opportunity. I had to design the class myself, had no real direction from that. So I leaned on a couple of professors I know, Dr. Piza, Eric Piza, bounced some ideas off of him. But it was appealing to me because obviously I didn't have any formal education in school for crime analysis, and I think that's really important. And there's very little, even here in the Midwest, that's really got some good crime analysis courses. They may have one here or there, but there's not really a good program for it. And that's something I would love to see change. I think we've got enough content that there could be a whole program devoted to this type of thing, and I would love to see that one day. But so I was like, this crime analysis course that I was teaching, I was trying to figure out, at least for me, like stepping back, what were some of the foundational things that I wish I would have known going into the position, and tried to focus a little more on those. We used Dr. Bobo Santos' book from that, kind of piecing some things together. There were some good conversations I think I had with some students during that course, and I definitely had a few that were interested, like really interested by the end of it, and seeking to be an analyst. I think I had one even email me and was asking some just follow-up questions once the course was done. So I was ecstatic about that, and even if I reached one person to spark that interest of crime analysis in them, I'm going to call that a win, because I value quality people who want to do the job, and I love seeing that. And so whatever seeds I can plant in some of our aspiring analysts, I'm happy to do so. But yeah, one of the things that I think I found more frustrating from teaching, it was like even Excel skills. I think I went in there with higher expectations than I should have had of the skill level some of the students had with Excel, and so I had to work through some of that, and it was kind of brutal at times. Like just even doing pivot tables to get aggregate stats for crime type or by week or year, but I had to like stop and make a video of just how to do a pivot table. That was a little eye-opening to me. Yeah,
I think it is odd. I do think that there's definitely some work to be done with the law enforcement analysis profession and the academic profession. I know there's been some talk over the years of trying to work together. It doesn't. I don't know if it I don't know. As just in terms of maybe very much of an outsider's point of view, it doesn't seem like the academic world is keen on listening to what analysts think they should be teaching. If I could just to put it kindly, I don't know. But I think to your point is like obviously something like Excel and pivot tables is something that an analyst is going to be asked to do. So they should be trained on that. Students should be exposed to that type of task.
Yeah, and I think that was some of the frustration I had with kind of doing tasks in the class. That was like, how do you get to end result of the analysis without using some of those tools in an education setting. Maybe there's a way, and I would love to know it. But that was really difficult for me to like stop and realize that some people just don't have those skills. They may not have even had the opportunity to really utilize some of those features, which is totally fine.
Yeah. Now, were they willing to learn for the most part, or was it just something that that's not something we're really going to get into?
I think they were for the most part. I mean, you have the normal few students who really do the bare minimum to get by, which is to be expected. But yeah, I think I had a few students would reach out and ask for clarification on how to do this, and I was happy to hop on Teams and walk them through exactly how to do it. And I think just seeing it done was tremendously helpful for those students because they would be like, "Oh, okay, that's pretty simple." It's like, "Yep, you're good to go." But I wasn't impressed with the end. I can't remember exactly what I had for the end project, but I had them kind of put together a PowerPoint on a crime pattern. I gave them some public data that I found on the internet and had them analyze it. And I wanted them to touch on the temporal components. And then I even did some of the problem solving things. So I suggested looking at the pop guides online and try to, if you were pitching this to a commander, what problem did you find and how can they implement something to fix it? And I was very satisfied with some of the results or the presentations the students put together. So hopefully it sunk into at least one person.
So what would you recommend as universities, or at least somebody trying to bridge the gap in what college students are learning and what the real world is going to want of them?
Yeah, I think, and pardon me for not knowing anything of like operations of IACA before I ever joined it. So maybe it's happened and there's a reason stuff didn't go further. But yeah, I would love to see some type of like integration of IACA with academia somewhere along the line. I think that would help tremendously because I think the IACA is in a good position to really advocate for our profession. That's kind of the point of IACA, I think. So yeah, advocation for analysts in academia, how to prepare students, and then obviously having practitioners teach series of classes at different universities would be great rather than just one class, because I mean just tactical analysis alone could probably be its own course to really learn what it is you're doing. And there's just a lot of components of crime analysis, I think, that just the basic understanding of how each works and all that could go a long way of boosting our profession and attracting really quality analysts to our fields. So yeah, I think first and foremost is, to answer your question, is I would love to see a partnership with university or something with the IACA. I've gone back a handful of times looking at the white paper that the IACA put out. When was that? Early 2010-ish. Had some guidelines of recommended coursework for universities to adopt for crime analysis. And I referenced that whenever I was developing my course, just so I was trying to at least stay on track with what somebody in the IACA and the people who've paved the way for us, really some of those good skill sets to learn.
All right, let's move on then. Let's get into your advice for our listeners, whether that's for new analysts, experienced analysts. What do you got for our listeners?
Yeah, my advice would probably be to people looking to get into the field or new analysts, really do your research. I guess if you're a prospective analyst, do your research on what crime analysis is, what you're going to be stepping into, and what would really set you apart from people or other applicants in the process, and seek out opportunities to either intern or shadow. And then for new analysts, finding a mentor to kind of really let you bounce ideas off of them and show you the way and help you get integrated into crime analysis and make those networking connections and all that stuff. And the biggest one, and this is probably, I need to pay attention to my own advice here because I'm quite introverted, but get out of your comfort zone, do things that scare you. And if that's taking on a new task or responsibility at work, or learning a new tool and presenting it to your colleagues or to command staff of here's what I can probably do, keep challenging yourself.
All right. Good advice. And for those looking for a mentor, both IALEA and IACA have mentor programs. So we'll put links in the show notes for those programs. All right, good advice there, Logan. Let's talk about Python for crime analysis. I had Dr. Andrew Wheeler on the show a couple months back, and he, of course, has just published a book entitled Python for Crime Analysis. So you have read the book and used the book, so I thought this was a nice callback that we could talk today and get your perspective as a practitioner.
Yeah, I had the opportunity of having Dr. Wheeler. He came out to our area a couple weeks ago and gave a training on Python and crime analysis. Local university, UMKC, Dr. Kutlaya, just to throw her name out there, really spearheaded getting him in here to teach Python to our analysts. And I think Python to me or coding in general for analysts, is a great tool to have on your tool belt. You can do so much with it, simplify things. And that's what Dr. Wheeler's book really, really teaches you how to do. And I think one of the things that stuck out to me as I was reading his book was, why learn to code? And I think that's a question that as I've talked to some colleagues, like they're like, I know how to use Excel. I can do these things in Excel. So why do I need to learn how to code? But I think he really did a good job in his book of explaining why that is. And probably the first one, just to kind of quote him here, let's see, it takes about 30 minutes to do a task on a daily basis. If you take 100 hours to write Python code to automate that task entirely, you saved yourself time within 50 days from automating that process. So, and he goes on to kind of explain some more of those concepts and why it's useful to learn to code. And I've been on the practitioner side of this. I taught myself R over the last couple of years. Python I touched on in college when I had started out minoring in computer science. So I did a Python course, but over the years I just didn't use it, and so it kind of got lost on me. And I remember seeing R at a couple trainings and a conference, and I was like, that's pretty cool and something new. And as I've expressed earlier, I like learning new things, so I jumped into R. And we have weekly, we call them shooting reviews, that in the very front of it gives you like the table of our patrol division and a number of homicides and non-fatal shootings, and then year to date of those with totals. The unit before had been like typing the stuff into PowerPoint, like the individual numbers, and then you'd have to go to the bottom and total those up themselves, or make an embedded Excel spreadsheet, I believe. But I opted to write a little code that would, reach out to the file that data was stored into, automatically retrieve the date frame I was looking for, change some column headers, and then spit out a picture that I could just paste into the PowerPoint. But yeah, Dr. Wheeler, I think he goes into pretty good detail on some of the different tools, how to set up Python. He's got great screenshots in there, and then kind of working through the basics of Python. So I think it's good for a new analyst that maybe they're looking to get into coding. He does the whole Hello World tutorial in there and goes over what different types of data operators that are present with Python, and then also goes into some projects that you could implement to make your life easier as an analyst.
Yeah. Now, did you run into any issues with admin rights, or how did you navigate with working with your IT department and working with these programs?
Yeah, so I didn't really run into any issues with our IT. Whenever he came into town to do the training, I coordinated that stuff with our IT department beforehand, and I didn't run into a single issue of getting programs installed. We use ArcGIS Pro, and so with that, I think there is an installation of Python there, but I think he goes over Anaconda in his book, and I didn't have any problem getting that installed at all.
All right, very good. So we will put a link in the show notes for not only Dr. Wheeler's episode, but how to get his book if you're interested. So, all right, Logan, let's talk about the conference.
Yeah.
IACA Conference was in Las Vegas, and that was your fourth conference. So how does the four that you went to stack up?
Yeah, I'd have to say my favorite one so far was probably Chicago. That was the first one I'd been to in a minute.
Yeah.
That was the second one I went to, but I'd never been to Vegas before, so that was quite a new experience for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the conference itself was really fun. I enjoyed it. I always enjoy them. I think the biggest thing for me was the networking opportunity. I just don't. Oh, it's nothing IACA's fault, but I really enjoy like the after hours, like sitting have a cocktail or something with a colleague, and
Yeah.
discuss what we're seeing and maybe answer some questions that I have, be introduced to new people. So like. I
Yeah.
mean, I kind of point myself back to Grapevine last year, first time I'd met Debbie Peel, and wonderful lady, extremely awesome background. So just being able to sit down with people who've paved the way for the analysts today to see what they were doing and why they did it, and them offer their advice. Those are the things that I really value, and I just don't think the like hotel itself really was set up for that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think so. It's interesting as you were talking there about the just hanging out at the hotel bar. I was thinking about Grapevine, so I was going to ask you if you were at Grapevine because I was on the outskirts of Dallas. You almost couldn't leave the building without going through the bar type
Yeah.
of thing. So while there was another conference going on at the same time, there was still a lot of folks from the IACA conference just sitting there that you could just walk up to and start talking to and meeting. To your point, I think just the homegrown nature of that for networking is really important. And I do agree with you. I think it was a lot easier to do that in Grapevine versus Vegas, where we had our area, but then it was Vegas. You just disappeared. It disappeared within the hotel. The hotel was ginormous,
Yeah.
and let alone if you left the hotel. So yeah, I understand that. I don't know if some of these locations, if it's better to be off the beaten path or not, maybe a destination, because the conference is in Orlando in 2025, so I feel that it's going to have the same feel there, that people are just going to be gone, but it's also on the outskirts of Orlando, so you might have the same situation there with Grapevine, where yeah, you still have the hotel bar there that you can mingle at.
Yeah.
So, and speaking of the conference, kudos to you. You were the 2024 membership award winner. So,
Thanks.
yeah, and you mentioned Darren Lee. I'm pretty sure he was the membership award winner.
Yeah.
And when I
think
had him up, so that's another thing you're trying to go toe to toe with him on.
Yeah.
With the membership award, do they explain why you got it, or what do you think you did to get the award, I guess is maybe the question.
Yeah, well, I know that. I mean, I read it on the nomination online, and I know
Mm-hmm.
I think two different people had submitted it or
Yeah.
nomination for me, and
Mm-hmm.
just kind of knowing who I mingle with in my analyst circles here in my area is just like, yeah, I'm honored that my colleagues thought that highly of me, and it's really nice to see that not always or your own agency may not express the gratitude and stuff to you, but honestly, it sometimes it means a lot more to me that my own colleagues here who work with me every day see that they know what it takes to do X, Y, or Z, and the amount of brain power, brain space it takes, and the toll it can take on you, or the job can take on you. So yeah, I'm thankful more than anything that I've got a good support system here in the metro, that they thought highly enough of me that they nominated me for that.
Sounds like a great feeling. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
All right, so before we move off of IACA, as I mentioned in your intro, you are a member of the Regional Associations and Chapters Committee, also known as RAC. And so I just want to get your perspective on, what you're doing, and what maybe do a little spiel on that committee. I'm not sure I have done a lot of discussion on that particular committee.
Yeah, the point of the regionals committee is to really engage the regionals in the IACA and share information between the regionals, form and then leverage our vast network of analysts to help people be successful. We've started up this year. Erin Wickersham's been awesome leading the charge. with making these rack chats. So we different topics throughout the year. I think probably one every month or so, from things to like hosting a regional conference, just sharing tips and tricks and things that other regionals have experienced. Either don't make this mistake or go this route. This worked awesome for us, just to share that general knowledge to everybody. And then we've done some on membership, so like engaging new members, engaging the members you currently have. And we're even doing one coming up here in November. Kyle Stoker with MARCAN, he led the charge here for putting out a salary and benefits study for analysts, and then he made this incredible dashboard. So I think he's going to join in on that, along with, I believe it's Trish from the East Coast has done that over on the East Coast as well. So it's good.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of sharing what works and what doesn't between regionals and trying to support everybody. So it's a great,
Yeah, and
I think it's a great committee.
Well, yeah, we'll put a link in the show notes for that dashboard to check it out, because it looks like as of now that you can actually still participate in the survey. So the survey's still open if folks are interested in participating in the survey. For the rack, what are some of the needs that you're hearing from those that are established? Like, what are some of the things that they're concerned with and that you're helping them out with?
Yeah, I think the biggest one that sticks out in my mind is engaging membership. Like even the most recent election, for example, I think typically IACA's, there's been a kind of low voter turnout. Even just a topic like that, you're sharing things amongst the regionals of like, we've tried this and we noticed X, Y, or Z, and just to kind of throw text lean out, just to try to get a little bit more interest in amongst their regional voting. They did I can't remember exactly how they did it, but we followed at MARCAN a similar thing. But you could submit the little email you get from the IACA once you voted, says thank you for voting. If you submit that to the board, then they do a drawing for a free membership just for voting. So I think we had some good turnout with that, just making sure people were trying to vote.
Yeah, I wondered what the turnout is either per state or maybe even per associate, like rack, right?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously with Amanda Bruner running from the Carolina Association, and then Jonathan running from TextLink, as you mentioned, I'm guessing those two regional associations probably had a pretty good turnout. But what were some of the other associations turnout, given that they didn't have one of their own in the race? I was always kind of curious how that played out. But you're right. I do wish more people voted, and it seems like they do. You do see a lot of chatter online, a lot of emails and whatnot, but for whatever reason, people don't vote. So it's a little too bad, but something that the association can continue to work on and improve on.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, one last thing I wanted to mention or get your perspective on. Saw on your resume that you are part of the International Homicide Investigators Association. And one of the things I enjoy reading analysts' resumes is to find some of these associations or trainings that may be off the beaten path a little bit. So I'm just wanted to get your perspective and get what you're getting out of that association.
Yeah, honestly, for some unknown reason, I don't get emails from that association at our department, and I don't know why.
Oh boy.
I think other department members have had issues with that, but they do a lot of great training with just like homicide investigations. I mean, they've got some really unique courses that just from the people that I've worked with who have attended those, they thought they were just absolutely awesome. I have some detectives within our homicide unit that have gone to a no-body homicide investigation course, and that's a kind of an interesting topic, but I mean, they came back and talked very highly of it. I didn't get a in-depth of the content they covered with it, but that's certainly intriguing to me. They have just foundational homicide investigations course, and I know that they have pretty good turnout of analysts that are part of that association as well.
The no body homicide, I'm just envisioning what that would mean. Obviously, probably missing person report, but there may be all signs leading to maybe some trouble, maybe something that's leading to a homicide, that it's most likely that they just haven't found the body yet.
Yeah.
All right. Well, very good. This leads us to our last segment of the show, which is Words to the World. Logan, this is where you can promote any idea that you wish. What are your words to the world?
My words to the world would be to think outside the box. Don't be afraid to do a little trial and error. And this applies to many different aspects of crime analysis. Whenever I teach different courses at the conference, this is one thing I always harp on. Be creative with what you're doing.
Very good. Well, I leave every guest with you've given me just enough to talk bad about you later. But I do appreciate you being on the show, Logan. Thank you so much, and you be safe.
Thanks.
Thank you for making it to the end of another episode of Analyst Talk with Jason Elder. You can show your support by sharing this and other episodes found on our website at www.leapodcasts.com. If you have a topic you would like us to cover or have a suggestion for our next guest, please send us an email at leapodcasts@gmail.com. Till next time, analysts, keep talking.